Good evening. We're going to spend tonight talking about behaviors and what children communicate and how to respond to those behaviors. So I'll start by just introducing myself. My name is Melissa Simpson. I work for an agency called the Child Care Resource Network. I am one of the family engagement specialists. My contact information is listed there for email, or you can call or text me at that number, 765-742-7105. If you're in need of assistance with finding childcare, or if you're interested in more information about dealing with challenging behaviors, or if you're having trouble with potty training, or if you need any other resources, we are here to provide you with anything that you might need. So you can reach out to us. Our services are all free. If you need a child care referral, you can also reach out to us or go to our website and go to the Find Childcare tab. And there's a form on there that you can fill out, and it will get sent to me, and we will do what's called a child care referral. Using your address and other things that were important to you, we will send you a list of child care programs that meet all of those needs. So we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so just the learning outcomes for what we hope to get tonight. So in tonight's session, we'll examine how a child's social emotional development and their behavior can go hand in hand. We'll discuss how to identify what young children's behavior communicates, and how to respond by using effective social emotional teaching strategies. So we'll begin by reviewing the intended learning outcomes of the session. So we're going to identify how to reframe challenging behavior and reduce our negative responses. We're going to recall strategies that can be used to respond to behavior that builds young children's social emotional skills. So to start off, these are just some questions just to think about and jot down your answers maybe to yourself. So what are some behaviors that push your hot button? I know for me, my daughter, when she gets really upset, she uses this particular voice. It's this really whiny, very difficult to even understand what she's saying. That is, like the second she starts talking like that, that's just a hot button for me where I can feel myself getting angry. So how does that behavior make me feel? It makes me feel frustrated and angry. How does this impact your relationship with your child? So when she's doing that, it's very hard for me. I have to really consciously think to myself and calm myself down in order to be present for her. So me getting angry at whatever, if she's angry or whatever, me being angry at her is not going to make the situation better. It's actually going to worsen it. So I really have to be mindful of that when she starts using that voice. Or my other son gets very, very angry very quick. Like, and I that's another thing where I've had to really take a step back and say, okay, he's really angry and he's entitled to feel angry about whatever he feels angry about. It doesn't help me to feel better if when I'm angry, somebody's telling me that I'm not entitled to feel that, or I'm wrong for feeling that, because then that makes me feel embarrassed on top of it. So letting him have his feeling and me being angry at him for that is not going to do anything but worsen the situation. So it's just really being mindful of those things and really being conscious of what your hot buttons are and how you can cope with those feelings that the feelings that behavior brings to you. Also, so this is just an extension of the previous slide. So what ideas and beliefs do I have about how children should behave? I think that many people think, especially before you have children, I know that I'm guilty of this. I know I have family that is guilty of this. They can be very judgmental of others. If a child's having a tantrum in the store, people are looking. The parent of the child is embarrassed and feeling like they're alone. Nobody else's child is going to have a tantrum in the middle of Target, but they are. Most children have tantrums, have challenging behaviors. This isn't a one of a kind thing that's just you. So I think that a lot of people think that they're going to have this quote unquote perfect child that's never going to be frustrated or act out. But the reality is that most people are going to have children that are going to act out. They're going to have emotions because that's human. Are there challenging behaviors that I handle better than others? That's something to think about too. I know that that is very true for me. How do I respond when I'm frustrated? So this is something that is difficult for me because I get frustrated and then I start to raise my voice. So I've been trying to be very conscious of raising my voice is not going to do anything but escalate the situation. So I really have to be mindful of that. But that is something that I tend to do. And when I'm stressed, how does this affect the children? Like I said, when I start getting stressed and frustrated and raising my voice, it just worsens the situation. So my daughter can go from, say she's angry, she's using that voice like I spoke about before, that drives me crazy. And now the second she thinks I'm angry with her, she's crying. Now she's crying on top of it. So we've escalated the situation to a point where it did not have to go. So it's just, I have been trying to be much more mindful, especially as we all know during COVID, we're home with our children much more. Right now, my daughter has been home with me because she's been quarantined. So I really have to work on these strategies, especially when you're trying to multitask and do different things. It's really important to be mindful of this. Okay. So one thing is certain, it's very common for children to demonstrate challenging behaviors. Like I said, this is a common behavior. I know that it may not feel like it when you're in it, but it really is. And before we can fully understand challenging behavior, we must first understand the principles of understanding behaviors. So while challenging behavior can be frustrating to manage and understand, because we may not understand where our child is coming from, why they're angry about one block falling off of their tower, but that they're entitled to feel that, and they are feeling it. Keep in mind that it, again, is normal, and this is all expected behaviors as they're trying to navigate this world and learn how to cope with emotions. When managing challenging behavior, consider these three valuable principles. So behavior is a form of communication. Young children will use this to communicate until they learn a better, more appropriate ways to express themselves. For example, when you see a toddler biting, and that's just really a hot button for a lot of people because, you know, the child, if your child is the one being bit, you know, you're frustrated. If your child's the biter, you're feeling embarrassed. But there's a reason behind that. Most often, they're toddlers. They don't have the words to just express what they want. So if they want that toy, they know if they bite that child's going to drop that toy and they can grab it. So that's just really one of those learning experiences where we need to try to work with them to give them the words. And especially at a toddler, they may not be able to do that. So it's really just trying to be present and offer assistance as needed. Okay. And the behavior does have a purpose. As it's a powerful form of communication, children will use this behavior to get something, such as a toy, or to get out of doing something. Like I said with the biting, if they see a toy they want, and they know if they bite that child's arm, back, whatever, they're going to drop that toy. So it does have a purpose. Children will continue to use the challenging behavior as long as it's working. Studies show if a challenging behavior is not addressed early with appropriate responses and interventions, the child will experience negative results such as poor academic achievement, peer rejection, and even mental health concerns. Okay, so what does behavior communicate? So to help you better manage challenging behavior, it's important to discover the root cause. So you may teach the child a better way to express themselves. So things to consider. What is the child really saying? Do they have an unmet need? Is there something that they're bored, they're scared? I don't know how to do it. If it's too hard, they're uncomfortable, they don't understand the directions. Things to ask them. So what is happening? Why is this happening? When and where is it happening? And how can I support this child's growth and development? Okay, so just a little bit of information just about challenging behavior as a whole. So challenging behavior is a common trait among young children as they begin to explore relationships and test their emerging skills. Behavior is influenced by their temperament. So as that influences the intensity of their emotions, their frustration tolerance, and reactions to others and things. Their environment, their sociocultural factors. It is also known that our interpretation of a child's behavior contributes to whether that child is being considered challenging. Just as we discovered in when we talked about our hot buttons, it is believed that this type of interpretation is most often influenced by racial and cultural expectations. Studies have shown that parents and educators sometimes have differences in their expectation about children's behavior, which may influence the children's understanding about expectations in the classroom. And this is very true. As I was talking about that just brought me to, people may see this as a challenging behavior, but it is not to me. I allow my children to go up and down the slides when we're at the park. And I know a lot of people look at me like I'm crazy, like we're wild animals for allowing them to climb up the slide. But for me, like that's exploration. They're having fun. They're physically active. I mean, we know to watch and make sure nobody else is coming down, but other people may be looking at that and go and just are just appalled that that's what my children are doing. They're thinking that they're out of control when they're really not. That's just a difference in our idea of what's appropriate. So taking the time to understand all of these factors and influencers will help to better understand what's behind a child's challenging behavior. So what is a challenging behavior? So the challenging behavior is defined as any repeated pattern of behavior or perception of behavior that interferes with or is at risk of interfering with a child's optimal learning or engagement in pro-social interactions with peers and adults. So something that we need to work on in order to help a child with these challenging behaviors, we're never going to see, your child is going to always have some sort of challenging behaviors because that is just part of learning and growing. But if we equip them with those social and emotional skills, we can see a drastic decrease. So we've learned about the principles of understanding behavior and what behavior communicates. We are better prepared to help children learn how to build appropriate behaviors by working on their social and emotional competence. So promoting social and emotional development is critical during the early years. A child's social and emotional competence means they effectively demonstrate their emotions. They are able to make friends and are able to self-regulate. This competence is critical to the foundation of a child's relationship with others. So as it says here, it's the foundation for a child's relationships with others, and it helps to encourage friendships, facilitates problem solving, and prepares the child to be more successful in school and to stay in school longer, and even have stronger educational and economic outcomes into adulthood. So we want to remove punitive responses to challenging behavior. So what is a punitive response to challenging behavior? That is when we're reprimanding and threatening. So our responses are out of anger. They are counterproductive and harmful. They fail to teach the needed social and communication skills and rarely result in long-term change, behavior change. Like I said earlier, with my daughter, when I start getting frustrated and I start raising my voice and I'm angry, so she can tell that I'm angry. So it really is counterproductive to the situation. So we want to focus on a positive approach to challenging behavior. That is the best way to see long-term changes when it comes to challenging behavior. So we want to take a minute to self-reflect. Again, you can do this on your own. You can just write down some some things on a paper near you, type it in a note on your phone, whatever, just think about it. So we want to think about positive versus punitive. So think about your personal interactions with challenging behavior. How do you typically respond, positively or punitively? So just take a second to think about that, and just be totally real with yourself. You don't have to share it with us. You just think about it for yourself. And think of a time when you had a punitive response. Do you believe your emotions to this behavior trigger the punitive response? I know for me, when I have a punitive response, it is because I'm angry and frustrated or stressed, whatever your emotion might be at the time. And how might you have turned that punitive response into a positive one? So that can be a little hard, especially when you're feeling really frustrated. So even for us, we may need to take a few seconds to take some deep breaths before we react, and just try to be really meaningful and purposeful about how we're going to respond. So here's just a quick couple examples of how we can encourage using positivity. So this is this has just children's names and just lists their challenging behavior. So Aiden is not listening. Gavin is yelling. What is the desired behavior? So you would like Aiden to follow directions. Like typically in my house, it's cleaning up after ourselves. Everyone can dump everything out, and that's all fine and easy and fun. But then when it's time to clean up, everyone's exhausted and they can't do it. So the desired behavior would be to follow my directions and clean up after yourselves. So the positive comment and encouragement can be, thank you for listening and for following directions. Thank you for cleaning up your toys. So for Gavin, who's yelling, we had talked to him about using his inside voice, and then really acknowledging, wow, I really like the inside voice that you were using. Thank you. Give a high five. Whatever your child likes, whatever motivates them. These are just some very brief examples, but there's so many other ways that you can turn a situation and make it positive. So tips for encouraging your child. You want to get your child's attention. So you want to make sure they're not running around, or while my daughter is crying, that's really not the best time. We need to get her to a calm state before we can have a discussion. Use behavior specific language. So you want to talk specifically about the behavior that you saw and what you want to see, and be very clear about that. Keep it simple. Avoid combining encouragement and criticism. So just making it very simple. I saw you hitting your friend. Please remember, I saw you hitting your brother. I saw you hitting your sister. Please remember that our hands are not for hitting our friends. We're using whatever, say they're building. Our hands are for building fun towers and making it into even a silly experience. Encourage with enthusiasm, especially when you catch them doing whatever the activity is or whatever the action is that you want to see, making sure that you really take the time to focus on that and really applaud them for their effort. Double the impact with physical warmth. So that's the things like on the previous one with the high five, the hugs, whatever motivates your child. My 8-year-old, he's not a hugger. He's not into that. So maybe he wants to do a fist bump, or I don't know, even set up something and talk to them about what they would want to do, what would make them feel good. So you can even make up your own handshake that's specific to you and each of your children, or whatever works for you. You can just make that up on your own. Use positive comments and encouragement with the children in front of others. So making sure that when you're talking about it in front of others, you're being encouraging and positive. I said a little bit about this, about making your expectations clear. So tell the child what to do instead of what not to do. I remember when I was in college and I was in the lab school for student teaching, and we were talking about this exact thing. So it was really hard because my mind was just trained to say, get off the chair, don't stand on the chair, don't stand on the table, don't throw toys, don't hit your friends, instead of telling them what they should be doing. So instead of saying don't stand on the chair, our feet belong on the floor, don't throw toys, our blocks are for building. So it's really just like changing your, your mindset. that was difficult for me. Now it's just, part of my vocabulary when I'm talking about those things, but it can be very difficult. So really being mindful of that. Clearly and simply state what you expect your child to do. So making sure that you have a plan of what you want exactly to say and what you expect of them. Making sure that you're using age-appropriate language and have age-appropriate expectations. So obviously a conversation with your school-age child is going to look very different than a conversation with your toddler. Your toddler, it's going to be very brief, very short. Our teeth are for chewing food, and you're going to talk about those things. And you're going to get more in depth, obviously, if you're talking to your school-age child about hitting their brother. You can have a sit down, have a conversation about it, and come up with a plan. And you can even work together to come up with whatever the plan is. So, for instance, my boys, they are just fight, love, hate. It really is. One is 11 and one is 8. And 1 second, they're the best of buds. The next second, it's punches being thrown, screaming at each other. So we've discussed this in length about especially the hitting part. So they know we've come up with some consequences. So we've come up with some consequences. We've sat and had some conversations about, so what do you think should happen when you hit your brother, or whatever that may be, or even my daughter's guilty of this too, but mostly my boys. And we come up with some logical consequences in order to, okay, so we come up, sorry about that. We just come up with some consequences that make sense for the behavior. And it's not done as a punishment. It is just, if you do this, this is what will happen. Logical consequences must be practiced and enforced. So you want to make sure whatever consequence you come up with, you want to make sure that no matter what, if your child, so for mine, it's if they hit one another, they are, like I said, they're school age, they love to play their Nintendo Switches. So if there's any hitting, they do not have access to their Switch. Choices should be stated calmly, clearly, and respectfully. Logical consequences help guide children in learning how they are expected to behave in the real world. And so take a second just to think about what are some examples of logical consequences that you might use for your children. Like I said, for mine, my school-age boys, a consequence of hitting every time equals that they lose access to their Nintendo Switch. All right, now, hi, I'm about halfway or so through the presentation. I mean, please feel free to stay, and I'm happy to send you the PowerPoint. It's actually just you and I. I was just recording it so that I could send it out to everybody. So I was just going through the slides. So feel free to stay on and listen to the rest. Or if you want, I was going to just send this out when I was finished with it. Just send it out to everybody so that you have it. Can you hear me okay? If you want, you can unmute or write in the chat, but it's up to you. You can feel free to stay and listen to the rest, and then I'm happy to send it out to you. Like I said, it's just you and I. I've just been recording it just so I can send it to everybody.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just gonna listen.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Okay, so I was just getting on to talking about working on emotional vocabulary. So what this means is spending time to discuss emotions with your child and having them. So how old is your child?
I have a 5-year-old, and then I have a 2. Well, she'll be 2 on the 21st, and then I have a 5-month-old. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So this is really relevant for you then. So really talking to your children about what it feels like to be frustrated, because they don't know, they can't describe what they're feeling. They just know it feels bad. Mm-hmm. So talking about the difference between feeling mad and frustrated, embarrassed, and really giving them the words to describe what they're feeling. So when they're feeling mad, or if they're feeling scared, if something scares them and then they're acting out because they're scared. So for instance, my daughter who's 5, she had some really difficult rest times at childcare, like really difficult.
Mhm.
And but she was just afraid. She was afraid because it got much darker in her classroom than she was used to at home. So she was afraid. So she would act out. And by act out, I mean, she was literally like running through the classroom. But she just didn't know how to tell them that she was afraid. She didn't want it was darker. She wanted me. So really just working to give them the ability to describe what they're feeling. They're feeling lonely. They're feeling sad because they miss their mom. They're feeling nervous, whatever that might be, just helping them develop the vocabulary to say what they're feeling. Okay. So children with a strong emotional vocabulary are able to tolerate frustration better. They get into fewer fights. They engage in less destructive behavior. They're healthier, are less impulsive, are more focused, and have a greater academic achievement. Enhancing your emotional vocabulary. So these are some things that you can be doing at home in order to work with your children, in order to get them this emotional vocabulary. So you want to talk to them about your feelings. So if you're feeling frustrated, that's okay. If you're feeling sad, stressed, whatever you're feeling, I mean, we, even as adults, we're entitled to those. And it's okay to tell your children, I'm feeling really frustrated. And I make it a point to tell my children this every time when I'm feeling frustrated and they think I'm mad. I'm like, I'm really sorry. I'm not trying to be grumpy with you. I'm frustrated. I'm upset. I'm stressed out, whatever that is. And just talking to them about it and letting them know that you have feelings too. And sometimes it's hard for you to even manage your feelings. So of course it's hard for them. Ask your child to tell you how he or she feels. Teach new emotional words: frustrated, confused, anxious, excited, worried. So giving them those new words. Talk about how characters in a book, on a video, or on the TV in a show might feel. So if you see somebody, we do this a lot, just even pointing to the faces of characters in a book. What do you think? My daughter loves Llama Llama, so that's what's coming to my mind. What do you think Llama Llama is feeling right here? And letting her label what emotions she thinks they're having based on what their face looks like. Reflect on situations and discuss feelings. Accept and support your child's expression of feelings. So this is something that can be a little bit difficult, especially if you don't understand, especially for maybe your 5-year-old. I know for me and my 5-year-old, sometimes I don't understand what she's angry about. Or even, for instance, my son, he got some water on his Harry Potter book. He's 11, and he just was so angry about it. And I felt myself getting frustrated because I was like, this doesn't even make sense. Why are you so angry about some water on a book? The book's not ruined. Like, but that's not my job to tell him how he's going to feel. If he's frustrated, he's frustrated. If he's upset that there's water on his book, me making him feel like he shouldn't feel that is just going to worsen the situation. So really, I've been working much harder myself as a parent in working to accept and then support whatever they're feeling. If they're feeling angry about something, it's not my job to tell them that they shouldn't, because they do. And that's enough. That should be enough. Use books and art to talk about their emotions. And then also remember that the reason children have challenging behaviors is because it works. Children engage in challenging behavior because it works for them. So for instance, again, biting is an easy one to fit into here. So when you have a toddler who's biting, they're doing it because, let's say they wanted that toy, and when they bit their friend, they dropped that toy and they got it. So they got what they wanted. So why stop? So that's why we need to be available to really teach them those skills in order to replace that behavior with something else, in order for them to still get what they want, but without biting or hitting or whatever that might be. And remember to be a detective. So we talked about this. This is a little bit in the beginning, we talked a little bit more about this, but so remember to try and figure out the meaning of your child's behavior. So in the beginning, I talked about how your children, when they're having these challenging behaviors, when they're exhibiting these behaviors, it is their way of communicating. They're trying to communicate something to you. There's a meaning behind the behavior. So trying to take the time to just try to figure out what is it they're trying to tell you. So for instance, the biting, if they want the toy, that is what they're communicating. I want that toy, and this is how I know to get it. Here's some examples of some other things that they may be trying to communicate. I want you to play and I want your attention. I want that toy, food, whatever. I want to play with you. I don't want to stop what I'm doing. So if they're in the middle of something and they're really engaged in it and it's time to clean up, you may see some challenging behaviors. And that's what they're trying to tell you, is that they weren't done. I don't want to clean up. I'm tired. I'm frustrated. And sometimes, you know, if they're tired, they're starting a new childcare, their grandma dropped them off today and they really like when mom drops them off, they may be feeling sad. So those are all just things that they're trying to communicate and they just don't know how. So it's our job to really teach them those skills and talk to them about it. I know that you've missed some of it. But what questions do you have that I can help you? I mean, we have time. It's just you and I. I'm happy to help.
None really. I'm sad